There are many humanoid races, such as humans, elves, and dwarves. Then there are the demons, who, despite their small numbers, are much stronger than the humanoid races. The two forces have been at war for thousands of years, a conflict that led to the division of the continent of Leandras into East and West. However, when a moderate demon king took the throne 300 years ago, the conflict began to subside, and the humanoid races lived in temporary peace. But in the 5th month of the year 2826, this peace was shattered when a new demon king ascended to the throne and launched a fierce attack on the humanoid races. This attack became known as the Great Invasion. Several human nations fell, and by the 4th month of the following year, 2827, the Gargan Empire, considered the greatest human fighting force, was destroyed. The humanoids resisted by gathering their remaining forces and launching an attack on the demons. Among them was a suicide squad that managed to infiltrate the demon castle to assassinate their king. We see a human warrior attacking the demon king as onlookers prepare to fight. An epic battle ensues between them. Afterwards, we see dead monsters everywhere. Then we cut to the Suicide Squad making their way through the Demon King's castle. We see a knight checking on his friend, Theron, to see if he's okay, and notice drops of blood falling from him. He glares angrily at a female demon warrior who is smiling at him, ready to fight, with a human captive behind her. Theron tells his two friends to go on ahead, saying he'll take care of the demoness. His friends leave him and go. Theron slowly approaches the demoness, sword in hand. Then we see his two friends standing before a giant gate. The knight takes out a small bottle and drinks its contents. Suddenly, his eyes turn red. The knight and his female companion enter through the gate and see a red jewel before them. The knight approaches it, but his companion warns him that red orbs are attacking him. The knight tries to deflect them with his sword, but a red orb hits him in the leg. Another red orb was about to finish him off, but his companion tried to destroy it with her magic staff. However, the orb exploded, killing his companion before his eyes. At that moment, a winged being appears before him and unleashes a barrage of red orbs. The knight readies his sword to face this being. The knight charges the being, dodging the red orbs, and strikes it with his sword. But the being turns its hand into a sword, and they clash. The being then fires a volley of red orbs at the knight. He tries to dodge them but fails. The knight asks the being what this attack is. The being explains it is a high-level elimination spell that destroys everything. The knight decides to use the power of the magic gemstone in his sword to face the being and its spell. Indeed, the knight uses the gemstone's power and attacks the being, who tries to block the knight's attack. But the knight finally manages to pierce the being's body with his sword. The being's body disintegrates before the knight, who then collapses to the ground, dropping his sword and saying, "It's finally over." Silence falls over the place, and the knight feels he is the only survivor. He closes his eyes and remembers his family and friends whom he lost. He falls to the ground, but he hears a sound coming from the red jewel in front of him, which is glowing with a red light. The knight tries to get up to go to the jewel before its magical power gets out of control. The injured knight climbs up to it and reaches out his hand to grab it. He finally manages to grasp it, and as he does, a magic circle appears around him, and the knight starts to feel pain. Then we see a butterfly land on a flower. Suddenly, the butterfly disappears, and the scene changes to the knight waking up in a bed. He looks around and sees he's in a house. He wonders, "Is this my room?" He gets out of bed and goes to the window overlooking the city's buildings. He sees the beauty of the city, but quickly remembers the scene of the fires that were in the city, and his eyes tear up. He thinks he's dreaming. Just then, a girl enters to wake him up, saying, "Wake up, Kyle," but notices he's already awake. Kyle looks at her and says, "Lizzie." The girl, Lizzie, approaches him and asks if his stomach hurts. At that moment, Kyle looks at her and hugs her. Kyle is now sure he's in a dream, but Lizzie blushes and tries to pull away, but he won't let go. She tries to push him away, and they fall onto the bed. Lizzie gets angry and headbutts him in the stomach. Kyle falls back on the bed in pain. Lizzie yells at him, saying she's not emotionally ready right now, and leaves the room angrily. Meanwhile, Kyle is in pain and says to himself, "I feel pain, so this isn't a dream." He pulls the blanket off the bed and finds the red jewel. He holds it in his hand and is now certain this isn't a dream. Kyle looks in the mirror and notices he's younger and has no injuries on his body. He wonders what is happening to him. Kyle goes to the window overlooking the city and sees that the city has returned to its former state. Lizzie is also alive again, and he has become younger. He believes he has traveled back in time. He takes the red jewel out of his pocket, looks at it, and thinks it's the reason for what happened to him. Just then, he feels hungry. He goes to the dining room and sees many kinds of food on the table. He thinks Lizzie prepared this food for him because Lizzie used to come to their house to cook for him and his mother since they couldn't cook. Kyle smiles. He sits on a chair and starts to eat. His eyes tear up because he hasn't tasted food like this in a long time, and he continues to eat. We then see that Kyle has eaten all the food that was on the table. At that moment, someone appears from behind Kyle Kyle and is surprised that Kyle ate all the food by himself. He looks in the pots for food. Kyle looks at him and says, "Theron?" He remembers that he was fighting with him just moments ago. Theron looks at him and asks, "What are you looking at?" Kyle collects himself and asks him the date. Kyle is shocked when Theron answers that it's the 24th day of the 5th month of the year 2823. Kyle yells at Theron, "Are you sure about that?" Theron replies, "Yes." He adds that today is his birthday and that he should consider the meal he just ate his birthday present. Kyle tells him it's a cheap gift. Theron leaves him, saying he's starving. Theron tells him that if he goes and begs Lizzie, she'll make him a delicious meal. Theron leaves, and Kyle says to himself that Theron will do anything to achieve his goals. Kyle wonders, what should I do now? Did I really go back to the past because of some magical power? After that, we see Kyle go to the building next to his house, which we see as his office. Kyle sees a girl reading a book and is amazed when he sees her, remembering that this girl had died. The girl looks at Kyle and says, "It's rare for you to come here." It becomes clear that this girl is his mother, who spent the whole night reading books and didn't notice the time pass. Kyle asks his mother if he can ask her a question about magic. His mother doesn't know if she has an answer to his question or not. Kyle reminds her that she's one of the greatest mages in the city. His mother smiles at him. Kyle asks her if there's a magic spell to go back in time. His mother answers yes, explaining that there are spells that affect time, but they don't know where they are, and no one can use them because it's a matter of magical power. She also explains that even if the greatest mage in history used all their magical energy, she doubts they could travel in time for even a single second. Kyle wonders, even if they used a magical item? His mother is surprised and explains that it's an excellent idea. The magical item could be used as a catalyst to store magical energy. She explains that storing that much energy would take 1,000 years. Kyle replies, wondering about using forbidden rituals. His mother responds, a sacrificial ritual to convert life energy into magical energy. She looks at him and asks where he learned this. Kyle gets flustered and explains he read it in a book. His mother understands and explains that it's impossible, even using forbidden rituals. She adds that he would need the souls of half the humanoids on the continent. Here, Kyle remembers the battle and thinks to himself that it's possible someone sacrificed half the continent's population. His mother continues, saying there is no catalyst capable of storing the magical energy required for time travel. She brings him a book, opens it, and says, I found it. She shows him a picture from the book and says, the legendary sacred dragon's heart is the only option. Kyle looks at the picture and sees that this heart is the same as the red jewel he has. We then understand that the ancient magical kingdom of Excalus flourished for 1,000 years thanks to the sacred dragon's heart, but its energy was depleted, which led to the kingdom's fall. Kyle's mother explains that the sacred dragon's heart is the only thing capable of storing the magical energy to travel back in time, but it has been missing for 1,000 years, and she suspects the demons found it. Now Kyle understands. His mother is happy because they haven't talked this much in a long time, as Kyle had been avoiding her. But Kyle explains that he didn't mean to and apologizes to her. His mother tells him he has become more mature today, as if he came back from the future. Kyle is surprised by her words, but his mother explains she's just joking. She then feels hungry and tells Kyle that Lizzie has prepared food for them again. Kyle replies, explaining that he ate all the food by himself. His mother is astonished, and Kyle explains he couldn't help himself. His mother asks him if today is his birthday. Kyle replies that, as usual, she forgot his birthday. She smiled and replied that he should consider the meal his birthday gift. Kyle wonders in despair why everyone is so cheap with his gift. Afterward, we see Kyle sitting alone outside, looking at the sacred dragon's heart he has. He says, back to the past, and wonders what the heart wanted to accomplish. Kyle is surprised by Lizzie standing behind him. Suddenly, Kyle apologizes for what he did to her in the morning. Lizzie tells him, at least you feel bad. Kyle explains that he did it because he had a strange and disturbing dream. He apologizes to her again. Lizzie asks him about his disturbing dream. Kyle is silent. She asks him, did you see me die? Kyle looks at her and says, something like that. Lizzie then understood why Kyle was so upset in the morning. She smiled, sat down in front of him, and told him she forgives him. She also points out that today is his birthday. She wished him a happy birthday. Here, Kyle looked at her and remembered that her town is close to the demon territories and was the first to be attacked in the Great Invasion. They burned it all down until it was like hell. He remembered losing Lizzie. On that day, he swore to get revenge for her. Meanwhile, Lizzie was calling his name, and Kyle snapped out of his daze. Lizzie asked him what was wrong, explaining that he's scaring her. Kyle replied and reassured her. Lizzie sat down next to him. Here, Kyle says to himself that in 3 years, this peace will end, and that he is the only one who knows it. If he does nothing, he will watch his town burn again and lose the ones he loves. He yells out loud, saying he will change his fate. He stands up and repeats that he will change his fate and the fate of this world, and he swears he will do it no matter the cost. past. Lizzie looks at him in amazement. In the end, we see Kyle writing down the events he remembers that will happen in the future in a notebook. He wonders what he should do. The demons will launch an attack in 3 years, and if he asks people to prepare, they won't believe him. He decides he will kill the Demon King himself, but he backs down from this decision because he knows he can't do it alone with his current strength. He gets up from his seat, goes to his sword, and picks it up. We see Kyle training with a sword, remembering the demonic creature he defeated in the future. The creature throws red orbs at Kyle, which he dodges with his sword, but a large red orb hits him in the face. Kyle explains that there are 3 years left until the Great Invasion, and that he hasn't seriously trained in sword fighting and magic before. He casts magic spells and notices that his magical power has increased. He attacks the creature, but a magical red orb hits him and knocks him to the ground. Kyle realizes that he possesses great magical power, but his body cannot keep up with it. He would die if he went on a suicidal charge. There's no point in dying if he's trying to become stronger and live a long, healthy, and happy life. Meanwhile, Theron and Lizzie were watching him, wondering what was wrong with him. Lizzie says he's strange. Theron says Kyle used to give up after 15 consecutive staring contests just 3 days ago, and Theron, of course, won. Suddenly, a woman appears behind them, asking what they're planning. Lizzie welcomes her, and it turns out this is Layla-san, Theron's mother. Lizzie asks if her son, Theron, was supporting himself. Lizzie tells her he used to beg her for food, which annoys Theron. Layla-san looks at Kyle and wants to know what kind of monster he's fighting, saying he's acting like a different person. Lizzie explains that he had dead fish eyes yesterday. Theron says Kyle's dream was to inherit his legacy. Layla-san explains that a child like Kyle changed suddenly because of a woman. Lizzie is surprised here, but Layla-san sees Lizzie's surprise and explains that she might be wrong. Kyle feels a burning sensation in his back and believes it's due to his magical power. Lizzie approaches him and asks who the woman is. Kyle doesn't understand the question. Lizzie violently grabs him to make him confess. He doesn't understand Lizzie's behavior towards him. She shakes him a lot, and Kyle vomits. After that, Lizzie offers Kyle food and apologizes for what she did, but he was upset. Theron, who was sitting next to Kyle, was happy with the food. Kyle looks at Layla-san and expresses his happiness at her return, as well as his mother's. Kyle asks for permission to ask everyone a question. Layla-san is surprised by his manner. Kyle asks them who has complete influence to control and persuade several countries. Theron is surprised by his question. Layla-san considers his question. His mother answers that the highest-ranking priest in the motherland, Karis, has influence, and Layla-san says Randolph the hero, who defeated the Demon King 300 years ago. Theron explains that elves, dwarves, and humans would listen to him. Kyle understands here that kings, heroes, and priests are the ones people listen to. Therefore, he must become a hero within 2 years. He stands up. Layla-san looks at him and confirms that something has happened to him. Lizzie doesn't see a problem. Kyle is now thinking about the future, and they should keep an eye on him. Theron agrees to this. Kyle asks himself why his back is burning now. At night, Kyle is in bed, surrounded by books. He knows he has the advantage of knowing the future. Theron enters and is surprised. Kyle tells him he hasn't felt grateful that his mother is obsessed with books. Theron sits next to him and asks if he's sure he wants to become a hero. Kyle answers yes. Theron explains that this is not an easy thing to do. Kyle understands this and asks Theron if he has an idea for him. Theron asks him what about defeating the Demon King. Kyle answers him that if he could do that, he wouldn't be stuck. Theron agrees with him. Kyle asks him what a hero needs. Theron answers, power. Kyle replies that power alone is useless. He adds that he thinks he needs money. Theron explains that this is strangely blunt. Kyle says that a hero doesn't accept rewards for saving others, but traveling and adventuring require money. Theron understands that doing so requires funding. Kyle continues by saying that a hero needs connections with famous and influential people, as that increases your fame. Theron starts to worry. Kyle continues that with money and connections, you can do most things, but this is not enough. Theron asks him what else he needs. Kyle replies that a hero needs luck, but not just any luck. They must be in the right place at the right time when disasters occur, so they can intervene and become a hero. Theron looks at him and says, "You mean?" Kyle interrupts him, saying he doesn't mean to create disasters to solve them himself, but he is willing to use all available means, even if they are deceptive. Theron says this is not the saying of a future hero. He asks Kyle why he wants to become a hero. Kyle replies by asking him if he's curious. Theron looks at him and explains that he doesn't feel that Kyle's true goal is to become a hero, but that he wants wants to achieve something. Kyle smiles and replies that he has his reasons and Theron must trust him. Theron stands up and wishes him good luck. He leaves the room. Kyle tells himself that Theron will help him. Kyle opens his notebook and says he will use this for funding. He wants to meet her again as soon as possible. As for fame, if he can do something about the Arkan incident, he adds that time will be short then. The next morning, we hear Layla-san telling Kyle he will go on a trip. She asked him if he told Soraya. Kyle answers yes and that she cried a lot. Layla-san replies that she is overprotective of him. She adds that it's good to explore the world and asked him to take Theron with him. Theron is surprised. Kyle explains that he was going to do that and that he's happy now because he got her permission. Layla-san explained that Theron is a strong shield. Kyle promised her that he wouldn't waste his abilities. Theron here gets angry because he feels he has no say in the matter. Later, we hear Lizzie asking Kyle if he's going on a trip. Kyle answers yes, and that it's in 2 days. So she asked him where he was going. Kyle says he's going to the royal capital, Malad, because he will buy what he needs there and then start the real work. Lizzie here looks at him and asks him to listen to her, but Kyle interrupts her and explains that he won't take her with him. Lizzie gets angry and makes him understand that she trains with the prophecy warriors and that she won't be a hindrance to him. Kyle looks at her and explains that her mother doesn't want her to be in danger. Lizzie replies that she will apologize to her at her grave. Kyle continues that he wants her to stay in a safe place. Kyle promises her that she will be the first person he visits when he returns, and he asks her to wait for him. Lizzie looks at him and says she has nothing to say to him. Kyle smiles at her and says, "Consider it the composure that comes with old age." Lizzie asks him what he's talking about. They're 16 years old, and Lizzie here asks Kyle to promise her that he will return safely, and Kyle promises her that. After that, we see Kyle apologizing to Lizzie for asking her to accompany him to the market, but Lizzie doesn't mind, and Lizzie suddenly sees a creature from the elf and says she is beautiful. Kyle is surprised and leaves Lizzie and goes to the elf creature, and suddenly we see that Kyle remembers her from his future when they were sitting together and she asks him to call her by her real name, which is... Kyle speaks here and says Axis. The creature is shocked and angry and asks him what he said. Kyle is surprised because this is supposed to be their first meeting, and it's a secret name that should not be disclosed. And Axis asks him who he is, and she grabs her swords, but Kyle follows her and asks her to wait. Axis asks him to let go of her hands. Kyle realizes this will cause a commotion, but he has no choice, and suddenly we hear Kyle ordering Axis to sleep, and indeed she falls asleep. Kyle explains that Axis had said before that she had visited Ramarzi, but he did not expect to meet her, and suddenly he remembers Lizzie standing behind him, fuming with anger, who tells Kyle that she knows the creature is beautiful, but did not expect him to approach her so quickly. Kyle looks at her nervously and promises to explain to her that he was feeling lonely without her, but Lizzie interrupts him and says, "What are you talking about? I'm here," and gets angry and insists that she will definitely go with him on his trip. At home, we see everyone at the table, and Kyle says he is happy to meet her, and asks her, saying the name Orza San Alice. Is that right? Axis stands up angrily and tells him that only she and her father know this name, and asks him how he knows it. Kyle hesitates because he cannot tell her now because the event is after 4 years, and that they will fall in love and she will tell him the name herself. Axis explains that she must kill him so he does not reveal the secret of this name. Lizzie looks at her and says wait. Kyle says he will tell her in the end. Axis gets angry and asks him if he knows the importance of the real elf name. Kyle responds yes, and that he will not let her kill him, and suggests to her, until he can tell her, why not apply the contract to prevent him from using her name for evil. Axis is surprised by Kyle because he knows about applying the contract. Kyle explains that contracts are usually made with souls, but in the name of kings, and those who can control elements can grant their real names to bind humans. And he continues that the contract condition is not to tell anyone her name or use it for evil, and asks her what she thinks. Axis asks him, does he know what will happen if he violates the contract? Kyle replies, yes. I will die. Here Lizzie is shocked. Axis retreats and says his life is also at stake, and continues, let's do it if he is serious. But Axis cannot complete the contract now because the moon is not full, and the full moon will be complete in a few weeks, so they must wait until that time. Kyle apologizes because he will leave tomorrow. Axis is surprised, and then we see Kyle's mother crying because Kyle is preparing to leave, and Lizzie reassures her not to worry because she will be with him. Kyle asks her, are you really coming? Lizzie replies, of course, it's settled. Kyle's father wishes him good luck and advises him to take care of his friends. Kyle stands without responding. So Lizzie notices that his father is talking to him. Kyle understands this and asks his parents to take care of themselves. His mother cries, and Kyle goes with Thyron and Axis, and Lizzie follows them. And while walking, Thyron expresses that he is happy. A beautiful creature like Axis is joining them on the trip. Axis explains to him that she is not with them and is only with them to monitor Kyle. Lizzie asks Kyle, isn't the capital in the other direction? Kyle smiles and says says let's leave that for later. And he continues, since Orza, the element controller, is with us, she replies that she is not from their group, and Thyron and Lizzie applaud. Kyle continues that they will first go to Sandgard Mountains and asks them about the Sandgard legend. Lizzie responds, isn't it the legend about the magical kingdom of Axarls? Thyron also says the one about the magical princess's maze. That place is just a legend. Kyle approaches them and explains that he actually has a map of the place, and it shows the treasure room. Lizzie looks at him in despair, and Thyron says Kyle was tricked by a fake map, but Kyle insists it's real. Lizzie apologizes that he wants to believe that. Thyron explains that people interested in money end up miserable. Kyle understands they won't believe him now. But Axis suddenly says the map is made from a magical tree over 1,000 years old, and this technique was lost long ago and can no longer be made, and she believes the map is original. Thyron suddenly believes Axis's words because beautiful women's words are trustworthy. Lizzie looks at the map and says it's a vast place, and asks how long it will take to reach the treasure. Kyle reassures her that he has a plan, and Lizzie and Thyron ask about the plan. Kyle says we'll dig, and we see Kyle and Thyron digging, and Thyron asks why they are digging a tunnel. Kyle explains to him that they are making a shortcut to the treasure, because the maze is large and full of traps. Thyron is shocked by Kyle's words, and Kyle continues that there are also gases and magical weapons. Thyron angrily asks Kyle if all this was explained on the map. Kyle hesitates because he knows all this from previous troubles, but tells Thyron that the maze is legendary and they must be careful, and continues that when he said he wanted to become a hero, he did not know the first thing he would do is dig a tunnel. We hear Axis say why they are using a dwarf's soul to do this. Kyle explains to her that this saves them buying magical equipment, and Axis asks Thyron to stop digging because she has not finished reinforcing the walls. Thyron asks, what is this? And she tells Kyle to use detect magic to confirm the direction of the treasure room. Thyron asks Kyle why Orza seems more interested now. Kyle says she is a serious girl. Orza orders them to stop talking. At night, friends have dinner, and Kyle says it's very delicious. And Orza also feels the food is refreshing after the effort she used in soul magic. Lizzie asks them to eat, and Orza asks her if she caught this bear. Lizzie replies yes. Orza asks if she caught it in a trap. Lizzie answers that she caught it with her hands. Orza is surprised. After some time, we see Kyle looking at the map and saying, we're almost there, and Orza comes to him and asks about Thyron, who is not back yet. Kyle explains that Thyron said he would take a break, so Orza asks him why he wants to become a hero, and looks at his rings and asks if they are part of his training. Kyle replies that each ring doubles or triples his body weight, and continues digging and says he is currently improving his physical fitness. So she asks him why he is enduring all this, and if it has to do with knowing her real name. Kyle does not answer, but at this moment he shouts and says we've arrived, and asks her to call Lizzie and Thyron. And we see Kyle hitting the wall and it falls, and we see the treasure in front of them, which they look at in amazement, and Thyron runs to the gold madly. Kyle demands they maintain their focus, and reminds them that they only need money to achieve his goal. Orza agrees, and Lizzie too, and he asks them to look at Thyron, who has lost his mind to the money. At this moment Kyle says this is his chance, and he leaves them and goes to the room with the sword. And suddenly a girl appears in front of him, and says she is amazed that a human has arrived here. The girl explains to Kyle that he has overcome many obstacles to stand before her. As she continues her talk, Kyle cuts her off, letting her know that his friends will hear her. The girl gets angry and asks him if he dares to do that. Kyle interrupts her again and asks her to be quiet, explaining that he knows who she is, a perfect replica of the sorceress queen Seldonia, who ruled the ancient magic kingdom. The girl is shocked and asks how he knows her. Kyle responds that he will explain later, adding that he has overcome her traps and riddles to get here, and that he has carved a shortcut. Seldonia retorts how dare he do that in her tomb. Kyle moves and asks her to start the final test, stating that he will take the sword. Seldonia is also surprised and asks who he is. Kyle answers that she will find out soon, flashing a smile. The girl turns into green light and enters the sword, which Kyle then pulls out, remembering his friends and what happened to him earlier. Seldonia appears before him again and asks if this is real. Kyle understands that she has read his thoughts and explains that he possesses the Holy Dragon Heart. Seldonia is astonished because she knows that time-traveling magic exists. At that moment, his friends come looking for him. Kyle is annoyed because they know nothing, asking Seldonia to match his energy. She asks him how. Lizzie asks what he is doing here, and Kyle acts surprised that he found a legendary sword. His friends exclaim, "What?" Next, we see Seldonia enjoying Lizzie's meals, stating that they are very delicious. Lizzie explains that she prepared them for their trip and asks if she is really the sorceress queen. Seldonia clarifies that she is part of her and that she is a magical living, being created to assess their worthiness for her treasure. Theron asks how she can eat the meals. She replies that she transforms them into magical energy to sustain herself. Lizzie asks why she looks like a child. Seldonia explains that she froze her growth at the age when her magical power peaked. She continues that if they hadn't deserved her treasure, she would have set the last trap and destroyed the maze. However, she is satisfied with Kyle and that he can wield this sword. Kyle thanks her, and Seldonia asks him to take the summoned bag, as it is linked to the treasure chamber and suitable for extracting the treasure. Theron interrupts her, asking if he can also use the sword, and if he can use it instead of Kyle. Seldonia is surprised and refuses. Lizzie feels sorry for Theron, and Orza explains that tastes have not changed in 1,000 years. Later, in the street, we see Seldonia happily eating meals with them. Kyle asks her if she can eat later. Seldonia smells a delicious dish coming from a stall and goes for it, but Theron stops her, confirming that she resembles the childlike residents who visit the city for the first time in their lives. At this moment, Lizzie asks Kyle where they are going. Kyle replies that they have acquired the treasure and it's time to prepare for battles, emphasizing that they need high-quality equipment. They head to a shop. The vendor asks what they want. Kyle requests to buy some gear. The vendor apologizes and asks if someone referred him here. Kyle remembers that new customers must provide a deposit before entering the store. The vendor apologies, stating he wants 10,000 Gadol as a deposit. Kyle asks if 4 golden Excalibur coins would suffice. The vendor is astonished and thanks them for their dealings before showing them what's inside the shop. Then we see a man named Vispa, the shop owner. Seldonia asks him if these clothes are made by Milanis. Vispa is surprised and asks how she knows, as he was famous in the ancient magic kingdom. Seldonia clarifies that he wasn't that great, as he would cry every time she pointed out the flaws in his work. Vispa is astonished, and at that moment, Kyle appears and puts his hand over Seldonia's mouth, apologizing to Vispa for the words of a little girl. Vispa accepts his apology. Next, we see Seldonia sitting and enjoying another meal. We hear Vispa saying that he sees Kyle in dragon leather armor that offers physical and magical protection, which they made heat and cold resistant, as well as poisonous. Kyle asks to buy it, and Vispa is delighted. Theron appears and refuses to wear the same outfit. Kyle looks at Lizzie and Orza, asking them to buy what they need from here. Lizzie agrees, while Orza wonders what she should buy. Kyle puts on the outfit and notices it is easier to move in than he expected. Lizzie admires the gloves, and Orza wears a spirit gem amulet for the first time. Theron asks a girl in the shop if they have a fancy sword, and she goes to fetch it. Meanwhile, Seldonia is still eating. Kyle then asks the shop owner to show him the magical stones. Vispa asks Kyle for his opinion on an attack stone containing explosive magic. Kyle inquires about a stone effective against crawling monsters. Vispa brings him another stone. Kyle explains that this is the Blizzard Stone. Vispa confirms and adds that it's tough to add cold spells to stones because they are expensive. Kyle tells him he will take all of them, surprising Vispa, who asks if he will take all the stones. Kyle continues that if he has healing potions too, he'll take those as well. Vispa is astonished and asks if he will really take them all. Kyle clarifies that he will pay for it with gems worth 10 million Gadol. Vispa is stunned and can't believe it. We then see Vispa and the vendors bidding farewell to Kyle and his friends as they leave. Theron remarks that it was a massive shopping spree and hopes no nasty rumors spread. Kyle turns and reassures him that they will be leaving tomorrow. Theron is surprised and points out that there's no time to waste. Lizzie also mentions that she will take a look around since she rarely visits the royal capital. Orza asks to accompany her because she has been to the capital before. Lizzie thanks her, and they say goodbye to Kyle. Kyle feels happy that they are getting closer. Suddenly, Seldonia appears and asks to go along, suggesting there's surely a restaurant with delicious food. Kyle stops her because he wants to discuss something with her, and Seldonia agrees. Kyle talks to Seldonia about wanting to check something. He asks her if it's possible to change the future. Seldonia responds that it's strange to say that, adding that the future isn't predetermined at all. Kyle asks her to clarify. Seldonia explains that when she traveled back in time, she also returned at the same time to another world. This is her theory that there isn't a single timeline, but that time branches out like the branches of a tree, and Kyle's spirit jumped from one branch to another. The evidence of this is the holy dragon heart he used as a catalyst, which was also transported along with him. Kyle understands that if this is a new world, it doesn't have to follow the same history. Seldonia responds that not exactly, but important details will not change. She assures him that the great invasion will still happen. Kyle understands what she means. Seldonia hypothesizes that they can rewrite history through their actions, but this will be difficult. Kyle confirms that this is enough for him and asks her if there are 2 holy dragon hearts in this world, right? But only 1 copy exists. Seldonia has a theory about that too, that the highest type of forbidden magic is the fusion spell. Kyle is intrigued and asks her what it is, as he has never heard of it before. Seldonia explains that it is a spell to increase magical power by fusing souls. Kyle repeats her words in astonishment. Seldonia continues that your magical power is determined at birth according to your spiritual composition. She adds that in ancient Excalibur, they conducted studies on strengthening souls, and that this could be done through fusion. However, there are several issues. Kyle asks if they failed. Seldonia responds yes, and continues that they tried using infant souls and experimented with artificial souls. They weren't afraid of anything, but she strays from the topic. She clarifies to Kyle that there are now 2 holy dragon hearts, and asks him what he thinks happened to Kyle's spirit in this world. Kyle asks her in confusion what happened. Could it be? Seldonia confirms that she is there. He looks at his hands, and Seldonia continues that the fusion of souls happened to him without him realizing it. His spirit should have increased in power, and his magical strength should have doubled as well. She asks him if he remembers that. Kyle recalls his training earlier. Seldonia explains to him that he will be able to use powerful spells in the future. Kyle is astonished, but Seldonia reminds him that this is just her theory, and that his ability to master it is another matter. Kyle asks her if this will cause negative effects. Seldonia doesn't know, as this is unprecedented, and asks him to let her know immediately if he notices anything unusual. Kyle thanks her. And at night, Lizzie explains that she is used to camping outside, but the bedding is wonderful. Orza agrees with her. Lizzie asks her when she will sleep. Orza tells her that she looks forward to the moment every month when the full moon bathes her body. Lizzie is forced to sleep. Orza thinks that this trip isn't bad, and that Lizzie is a good girl, and that Seldonia has vast knowledge. And Tyrone is fun to watch. And there's Kyle, who looks at her as if he knows what's on her mind, but that doesn't bother her. Suddenly, Lizzie screams in her sleep that she is the only one allowed to get close to Kyle. Orza understands that she is talking in her sleep and looks at the moon, but suddenly she screams, clarifying that she forgot something. Then we see Kyle lying on the ground in the forest. He tells us that his endurance has improved, but he still has a long way to go. Seldonia appears and tells him about the ghost training style, explaining that it didn't exist in her time. Kyle looks at her and insists that this is nothing compared to real combat. He looks at his sword and feels like it's part of him. Seldonia confirms that, adding that the sword embodies the magical technique of Exoralis. No human-made sword can match its strength. Kyle tells her that he has used mithril swords before, but they don't compare to this sword. Seldonia clarifies that this sword is not made of mithril. Kyle is astonished. Suddenly, Orza comes to them. Kyle is surprised to see her and asks what brought her there. Orza reminds him of the contract application date. Kyle also forgot about it. Orza tells him that this was his suggestion. Kyle realizes this, but asks her to do it later. Orza gets angry because the other appointment is in a month and her real name is at stake. Kyle feels compelled to agree as she insists. We see Orza say that usually we reveal our real names to each other and vow to stay together for life, and a wedding ceremony is held. Her heart trembled when she first heard this, and she never imagined doing this with someone she has only known for half a month. She calls out to Kyle, telling him to stand here, but Kyle has fallen asleep. Orza calls to him. Kyle wakes up and apologizes to her. He stands in front of her. She tells him that she will apply the contract. We see Orza performing some magical actions. Kyle thinks to himself that from now on, things will be as they were before. Orza enacts the contract and orders Kyle not to reveal her real name to anyone or use it for evil. She commands him to swear to that, and Kyle swears. Suddenly, a strong light shoots up into the sky. Kyle leans closer to her, but Orza pushes him away. Here, Kyle apologizes to her, but suddenly we see Orza explaining that since she is in the magic circle, she is sealing a contract with the spirit of the fire salamander. Kyle is surprised. Orza looks at him and says that his first order is to burn the person in front of him. We hear Kyle scream and the sound of an explosion. In the morning, Kyle, Orza, and Tyrone look tired. Lizzie asks them what's wrong. Kyle tells her that a simple accident happened last night. Orza orders him to be quiet and not talk about it. Lizzie asks Kyle about the smell of smoke coming from him. He replies that some understanding happened last night. He looks at Orza and explains that the contract was applied. He asks her why she is continuing her journey with them. Orza responds that she wants to know how and why he knows her real name, and that she will not allow Kyle to be out of her sight. Tyrone informs them that he is tired because Lizzie interrupts him, saying he must have been flirting with women. Tyrone gets angry. angry, so Lizzie asks them to let it go, and asks why they are heading to Arkan. Kyle hesitantly replies that Seldonia has a prophecy, and Seldonia is surprised. Kyle continues that according to his readings, Arkan should be their next destination. Seldonia agrees with him. Lizzie is puzzled by her response, and Kyle assures her that she is just imagining things. They arrive at Arkan, and Lizzie is amazed by the crowd. Tyrone explains to them that Princess Melina is coming to offer condolences, and he always hoped to see her. Lizzie states that they are lucky. Orza too is seeing the princess for the first time. Then the princess appears before the crowd. Orza states that the princess is the future queen, and they confirm that she is indeed beautiful. We see children gathering around her. Suddenly a little girl falls, and we see the princess rushing to her to check on her. People in the crowd applaud, and some from the public mention that the princess is taking time for this visit. At that moment, Kyle sees the princess's guard, who is Zentos, looking towards Kyle before walking away. Seldonia asks Kyle if he is sure this is the princess. Kyle replies yes, and that she is 16 years old and is destined to die in 2 days. Later, Kyle sits with Seldonia and tells her that in 2 days the princess will die on her way from Arkan to Sanis village, and that a hydra will attack the caravan. He explains that the forest neighboring Arkan is teeming with monsters, and that the village of Sanis was attacked a month ago by a hydra, and the princess came after hearing about this attack, and she will head to Sanis village, which is still dangerous, and will be killed there. People will say it's a tragedy and misfortune, but Kyle thinks this is due to her recklessness. Seldonia asks him if there was something suspicious about her death, like a planned assassination to make it seem like it was the work of monsters. Kyle clarifies that these are different rumors about the princess's death. He continues that the biggest suspicion falls on her half-brother Prince Carinus, because he is second in line to the throne as he is the son of a mistress, and he stands to gain the most from her death. He explains that what raises his suspicion is that the prince is currently in the city. Seldonia tells him that nobody is talking about it. Kyle informs her that the prince is withdrawn and does not appear publicly. He adds that all of these are rumors about her death and eventually deemed it an unfortunate accident. Seldonia realizes that Kyle wants to exploit this incident. Kyle responds yes, because by saving the princess, he will become a hero. Kyle gets up and continues, saying that the key is to make his intervention to save the princess look spontaneous, but he explains that he doesn't know exactly where the Hydra will attack, so he has to keep an eye on her. At that moment, Theron comes in and tells them that he asked around about the princess's plans but didn't find anything. Kyle asks him why he was asking about her plans. Theron replies that it's so he and the princess can have their fated meeting. Kyle is surprised and asks, "What?" Theron continues that he'll bravely step in to protect her from any danger that comes her way. Kyle is shocked, so Theron asks what's wrong. Kyle tells him he had the exact same idea. Theron is surprised and gets angry, but Kyle explains to him that the princess really is in danger, and that this is based on Seldonia's vision of the future. Seldonia agrees with him. Theron thinks this is his chance, and that he must catch up to the princess. Kyle advises him not to rush. After that, we see the princess's procession leaving the palace, and we see Kyle and his friends watching the procession. Lizzie asks, "Is the princess really in danger?" Theron tries to explain that it's a vision, but Seldonia cuts him off and tells them it's her own vision of the future. Orza asks how they'll follow the procession since they can't get too close. Seldonia explains that she'll help them with her special powers, and suddenly, she turns into a falcon. Everyone is amazed, but Seldonia explains to them that her true form is the gemstone inside Kyle's sword, and that this body of hers is only a symbolic image made of magical energy, and can be changed easily. Then, she flies into the air and observes the princess's procession from a distance, without anyone noticing her, and what Seldonia sees, Kyle and his friends can watch through the sword. They see the city guards protecting the princess. Kyle points out that the city guards are well trained, but you can't rely on them. At this moment, Orza says that this is amazing, and if they use this power properly, it could be even more useful than a good weapon. Lizzie agrees. Theron shouts because he's jealous that Kyle can peek whenever he wants. Lizzie and Orza are surprised by what he said. Just then, they hear Seldonia tell them that something strange is happening. Kyle quickly asks if it's the monsters. Seldonia explains that the drivers of the princess's carriage are attacking the guards. Theron says this is crazy. Kyle runs and orders them all to head over there. We see that the carriage drivers have taken down the guards, and one of them throws magic dust. Kyle and his friends approach, and Kyle chants a magical incantation and pounces on the carriage drivers, taking them out. Then he ties them up with ropes. Theron goes to check on the princess and tells them that she's unconscious. Kyle explains that the attackers must have some allies who could show up at any moment, and asks Theron to stay with the princess. Suddenly, a dog appears and attacks Kyle, but he finishes it off with his sword, and we see another group of hellhounds standing in front of them. They start attacking, and we see Orza and Lizzie taking them down. One One of the dogs gets close and devours one of the carriage drivers. Lizzie points out there are too many of them. Kyle asks Theron, "Can you drive the carriage?" Theron goes, but tells Kyle he can't because the reins have been cut. Suddenly, they hear the footsteps of a giant beast approaching. Kyle was expecting this, and Seldonia tells him it's near. Kyle tells Theron that the princess's safety is their top priority, and asks Theron to stay with her. Then he tells Lizzie and Orza to go to Theron. Orza asks him if he's going to fight it alone. Kyle explains that he won't do anything reckless and that he has a chance to take it down. Orza looks at him and asks him not to die. Kyle runs toward the monster. Orza and Lizzie fight the hellhounds, and Orza summons Salamander, who appears and sets fire to the hellhounds. On the other side, we see Kyle running, looking for the monster, and we hear Seldonia ask if he can really defeat the Hydra. Kyle says that the number of heads the Hydra has shows how strong it is, and that he'd beaten a Hydra with 3 heads before. Suddenly, the Hydra appears before him. Kyle is shocked because this Hydra has way more than 3 heads, and the monster roars. Seldonia asks, "Kyle, should we run?" But Kyle explains that it's too late for that, and he has to fight. The Hydra moves to attack Kyle. Kyle points out that the Hydra's movements are predictable, but its scales are resistant to sword attacks, but even more dangerous is its poisonous breath. The Hydra breathes poison at Kyle. The area fills with the smoke of its breath, but Kyle is okay thanks to his dragon skin armor, which neutralizes the poison. Kyle takes out a magic stone and throws it at the Hydra, causing an explosion that freezes it. Then Kyle throws another stone, which explodes on the Hydra. The Hydra breathes more poison at Kyle, but Kyle dodges it again. With the dragonhide shield, Kyle attacks Hydra and manages to cut off one of its heads. We hear Seldonia telling him that he's fighting better than she expected. Kyle replies that he came prepared, but the monster's regeneration ability is very fast. On the other side, Theron, Lizzie, and Ozra are still fighting the hellhounds. Ozra says she's worried about Kyle. She wonders if Kyle can really fight Hydra alone. Lizzie tells her she's worried too, but they have to deal with these hounds first. And we see Theron finishing off one of the dogs. Then, we see Kyle throw a magic stone at Hydra and freezes it. But quickly, Hydra breaks free from the freeze, and Kyle realizes he only has 1 magic stone left. Hydra attacks him, but Kyle dodges and cuts off another head, but it regrows. Kyle explains that this monster's regeneration is even faster than the 3-headed Hydra. Kyle says he's got to target the source. Kyle takes out his last magic stone, uses it, and rushes straight at Hydra. We see Kyle stab his sword into Hydra's body. The monster roars in pain. Then Kyle uses his magic rings to strike from inside and puts his hands in, but the monster flings him away. But he gets up and sees Hydra standing in front of him. But then we see a green light coming from inside Hydra's body, and suddenly it explodes and is torn to pieces. Kyle is happy he managed to defeat it. Here we hear Seldonia explaining that Kyle put explosive stones inside the wound. Kyle says that just throwing the stones at Hydra wouldn't have done any damage. Seldonia tells him this attack was powerful. Kyle says this kind of move depends on speed and strength, but it's dangerous for him, so he can't use it a lot in combat. Meanwhile, we see the friends have finished off the hellhounds. Ozra tells Lizzie she's worried about Kyle, so they need to go to him, but they're surprised when Kyle just returns to them. Ozra asks him if he managed to beat Hydra on his own. Kyle replies, yes, but that he had some trouble. But Ozra tells him he smells bad, and when Lizzie gets close, she agrees with Ozra that Kyle reeks. They tell him he smells like Hydra and run away from him, saying he should get rid of the smell. Kyle stands there, frustrated with them. Then we see Kyle pouring water on himself, and we hear Seldonia ask if he was expecting more praise, but Kyle asks her to be quiet. After, Kyle goes to Theron and asks about the princess. Theron tells him the princess hasn't woken up yet, and it seems she and her maid were drugged. Kyle climbs into the carriage and sees Ozra and Lizzie sitting next to the princess. He tells them they need to give her an antidote so she'll wake up. Ozra agrees, and says buying the antidote was a good idea and useful. She takes out the antidote and gives it to the princess. At that moment, Theron tells Kyle that he found something on the ground. Kyle takes it from him and tells him the drivers lured the monsters to attack the princess. He explains that the previous death of the princess wasn't an accident, was an assassination. In the city, we see the commander standing with the prince. The commander tells the prince they have sent out a squad. At dusk, Kyle enters the carriage and asks about the princess. Ozra shakes her head that there's no change. At that moment, the princess starts to wake up. She asks them if she's alive. Ozra tells her to take it easy. The princess says she didn't think she'd ever wake up again, then asks if it was them who saved her. Theron jumps in, quickly, saying he was the one who saved her, but Lizzie immediately punches him in the stomach and gestures for Kyle to speak. Kyle bows before the princess and tells her his name is Kyle, and that he and his friends saw that the princess and her guards were being attacked while they were traveling, so he and his friends saved her from the monsters. At that moment, Arca, The princess's maid wakes up and runs to her, but the princess asks her to calm down because these people are the ones who saved them. But Arka says they shouldn't trust strangers, but the princess thanks them for saving her. The princess stands up, but Kyle tells her things are bad outside. Still, the princess insists on going out. Outside, the princess walks to one of the drivers tied up with ropes and looks at him. Then the princess turns and asks if they are on the road connecting Arkeen and Sonis. Kyle answers yes. Then the princess asks if all the guards are dead. Kyle tells her they were already dead when they got there. Lizzie notes that the princess seems different from before. Ozra agrees. At that moment, Sildonia tells Kyle that a group of knights is coming from Arkeen. Kyle tells the princess. She gets shocked and tells them they have to escape immediately. She adds they won't just kill her, but all of them. Kyle asks if the guards from her kingdom won't protect her. She says no, and adds the man who wants her dead is the commander of the 2nd Battalion Zenthos. Kyle is surprised and remembers seeing him with the princess in the city. Kyle asks the princess, "Do you mean that Zenthos?" The princess goes to Arka and tells her to burn all the bodies. Arka says some magic words. Suddenly a ball of fire appears above her and burns all the corpses. The princess tells them that Zenthos really wants her dead, and burning the bodies will make them harder to identify, and they need to buy as much time as possible. She orders Arka to take command, and tells Kyle and his friends that they need to leave right now. Theron throws the bag of sand into the fire, saying they wanted to buy as much time as possible, and the monsters will help hold up the pursuers. They all get into the carriage and leave the place. We see Princess Melina thanking Kyle and his friends. Kyle wonders if Commander Zenthos really planned this attack. The princess answers yes, along with her older brother, Carinus, the mastermind behind the attack. Theron is surprised that her brother planned this. Orza understands that it's a family conflict. Kyle asks the princess again if she's sure. The princess says yes, because she heard them planning it last night. We see a flashback of the princess falling to the ground, dropping a cup from her hand. Before she faints, she overhears Commander Zenthos and her brother, Prince Carinus, planning the attack. Zenthos adds that they will tell everyone she insisted on going to Sanis village despite the danger. Prince Carinus confirms that the beloved princess will have a tragic accident and die a horrible death. At that moment, the princess faints. Back in the present, the princess confirms that she knows her brother has always had such ambitions, but she thought he didn't have the guts to act. Her handmaiden interrupts, telling her she's revealing too much, but the princess tells her, "It's all right, Ninos." Theron suddenly stands up, saying he recognizes the handmaiden as the girl who was carrying flowers in Arkan. The girl gets flustered, but the princess asks him, "You noticed?" She continues, saying she was the one who asked her to change her appearance. Theron explains that she caught his eye because she looked like she would be a beauty in the future. Orza is annoyed. Kyle asks the princess, "Why did you ask her to do that?" The princess explains that she wanted to win the people's support. Theron whispers to Orza that the princess just admitted it. Orza remarks that human politics are complicated. The princess asserts that she never suspected Zenthos. She continues that her brother is unfit to rule, but Zenthos' support makes his position strong because Zenthos is a brilliant and very popular commander. She explains that she was always wary of her brother and made sure to take Kilrin and the 5th Legion with her whenever she went out. Kyle is surprised, having heard that the 5th Legion is composed entirely of women. The princess confirms this is true, and because of their great elegance, they were summoned for the celebrations in the royal capital. That's why Zenthos accompanied her this time. She adds that she should have been suspicious of her brother accompanying her. Kyle thinks to himself that he can't believe Zenthos was involved in the assassination, but he's sure the princess is telling the truth. He states that Zenthos is now an enemy. He tells the princess that since the assassination attempt failed, they will surely plan another attack. The princess confirms that Zenthos must have a backup plan. Kyle believes Zenthos will claim that he and his friends were the ones who attacked the princess. Lizzie is shocked and asks why he would frame them. Kyle explains that Zenthos will paint them as heinous murderers who killed the princess's guards. Theron asks him, "So what now?" Kyle tells him the princess told them everything so they wouldn't be able to run away, then asks her if that's true. The princess explains that they are all involved with her and must do everything they can to survive. She promises them a great reward if they return to the royal capital. Kyle agrees but tells her they don't need money, they only want honor. The princess is surprised by the unusual request. The princess explains that it's in their best interest to buy time for help to arrive, and that Kilrin's 5th Legion is expected to reach Arkan tomorrow morning. They will look for the princess when they find out she isn't there. Kyle wonders if they will encounter the 2nd Legion on their way. The princess explains that with the 5th Legion present, their forces will be equal. It becomes clear to Kyle that the 2nd Legion is in a difficult position. Theron suggests hiding in Sanis village, village. Kyle objects, saying it's better not to, because they would destroy the village to cover up the matter. Lizzie worries that the Second Legion might actually do that. Orza explains to Lizzie that they killed royal guards. Kyle adds that they wouldn't hesitate to kill 100 villagers. He suggests they should go back, explaining that there are tens of thousands of people in Arkan. They can't kill everyone there. He adds that they will meet the 5th Legion on their way. The princess interrupts him, saying they will also meet their pursuers, and asks Kyle if he has a plan for that. Kyle replies that they will break through them directly. The princess is astonished. We see the Second Legion. Seldonia is watching them and tells Kyle that Zentos is not with them. The princess tells Kyle that the smart sword is a useful tool. Kyle explains that Seldonia's scouting ability is essential for them. He continues that as long as Zentos isn't with them, they can plan accordingly. He thinks their odds are good. The princess sees them preparing a large number of magic stones. Lizzie gives the princess potions and advises her to drink one if she gets injured. The princess sees they are high-level potions. She looks at Kyle and his friends and asks them, "Who are you?" Kyle tells her they are a group of ambitious heroes who happen to be nearby. Meanwhile, we see Prince Carinus, furious about what happened. Zentos stands before him, telling him not to worry and assuring him that his men are currently pursuing the princess. But the prince asks him what he's doing here. He should go and finish her off himself. Zentos explains that if the princess isn't in Arkan when the 5th Legion arrives, the Legion's commander, Kilrin, will question him, and that the prince must handle it himself. The prince tells him he will not allow another failure and orders him to eliminate Princess Melina, no matter the cost. Zentos swears to the prince that he will not fail him. We see the Second Legion on its way. The Legion commander orders them to halt. A soldier comes and informs the commander that the princess's carriage will pass by here soon. The commander orders them to get ready and tells them to aim for their legs to immobilize them. At that moment, they see the princess's carriage approaching. Before the commander can order the soldiers to fire their arrows, he sees magic stones falling in front of them. Suddenly, the stones explode. We see that Seldonia was the one who threw the stones at them. The commander orders them to hold their formation. Suddenly, Kyle appears before him, driving the carriage and passing through them. Orza casts a magic spell on them, and we see the explosions increase. Theron seems excited and wishes for the Legion soldiers to die. Lizzie and the princess were inside the carriage. The princess thinks it's amazing. Kyle passes through the middle of the Legion. The commander announces that they will continue the pursuit with whichever soldiers can still move. Theron takes one of the potions and tells Kyle they can do many things when money isn't an issue. Kyle states that the plan was terrible, but he's glad it worked. He reassures the princess that they are safe for now. Suddenly, they feel something wrong with the carriage. It becomes clear that one of the wheels is damaged. Orza suggests they should abandon the carriage. Lizzie tells the princess and the two ladies to follow her. Kyle asks Orza if she can use Windwalker. Orza replies yes, but she's not sure if they've gotten rid of the soldiers. Kyle asks Seldonia to tell him about the soldiers. She confirms that 30 soldiers are chasing them. Kyle remarks that it's a small number, but they will have a squad waiting at the city entrance. He suggests that one of them must stay behind to delay them. Orza is shocked and tells Kyle that they are 30 royal guards, but Kyle tells her that the priority is protecting the princess. Orza gets angry, but Kyle tells her that Theron can delay them on his own. Theron wasn't paying attention to what Kyle said. Kyle tells him he will stay behind to delay the royal guards. Theron is astonished. At that moment, Lizzie tells Kyle they are ready to go. Kyle asks Orza to use Windwalker. Orza casts the Windwalker spell. Theron calls out to Kyle, telling him to wait and asking how he can delay the royal guards by himself. Kyle tells him it will be difficult and wishes him good luck. Lizzie also wishes him luck. Theron calls out to them, asking them to wait, but they have already left. Theron is in shock. We see the guards approaching. We notice Theron raising a white flag of surrender. He tells them he doesn't want to fight. Suddenly, the guards surround him. Theron begs for their mercy, telling them this is all Kyle's fault for leaving him behind and running away. He asks them to let him go and offers them a lot of money that he found in the Sangard Mountains labyrinth, saying he can lead them to it. At that moment, two guards inform the commander that the princess is not in the carriage. The commander understands that they used the horses to escape and orders his men to go after them. Theron asks the commander, "What about me?" The commander orders the guards to get rid of him. We see Theron begging him not to kill him, saying he'll do anything. The commander raises his sword and tells Theron he's in their way. Meanwhile, Orza asks Kyle if he's sure about leaving Theron behind, worrying they will kill him. Kyle tells her he didn't wish for anyone to die. Orza asks him if he's serious. At that moment, Lizzie tells Orza she forgot to tell her something. Orza asks what it is. We hear Lizzie telling her that Theron is much stronger than her and Kyle. We see Theron kill the commander with his sword. Theron states that killing the commander first was the right choice. We see Theron standing amidst the guards, with the commander's body in front of him. Theron takes off his rings and throws them in front of the guards, who stand in astonishment and fear. Theron tells them he's lighter now. He rushes forward and attacks the guards, separating their heads from their bodies with effortless speed. The guards attack him. Theron throws a magic stone at them. The stone explodes. We see the horses have run far away, and Theron is happy about it. Meanwhile, Kyle tells Ozra that Theron disappears a lot because he practices with his sword by himself. He adds that while Theron might have no magical ability, he's much better with a sword than him. Lizzie chimes in, saying Theron never misses his training. Kyle continues, explaining that Theron always fights savagely, and he'd never want to face him. Ozra then asks about Theron's goofy behavior. Kyle asks her if that behavior made her underestimate him, adding that anyone who fights him without realizing the truth. Ozra interrupts, stating that Theron would tear them apart. She understands that Theron is skilled at deceiving his enemies. Kyle clarifies that this deception is only half of it, adding that Theron wouldn't be able to hold back against 30 royal guards and wishes their deaths weren't necessary. At that moment, we see Theron taking down the guards. He notices there are only 8 guards left. Suddenly, Theron throws down his sword, surprising the guards. He explains to them that his mission was to delay them, not kill them all. Since their horses have fled, he has succeeded in delaying them, and it's impossible for them to catch up to the princess. He continues, saying this is the perfect time for them to escape, and if they don't hurry, only some of them might survive. The guards actually retreat. Theron takes out a serum, and we see he has 3 magic stones in his hand. He throws them at the guards, and the stones explode among them. Theron picks up his sword and finishes off the remaining guards. He sits on the ground, explaining that he never intended to let any of them survive, and wishes his comrades success. Elsewhere, Zentis notes that someone has interfered. We then see Zentis on his horse, ordering the guards to protect the prince before riding off. Seldonia tells Kyle what she saw. A single knight is heading their way. Suddenly, we see Zentis cast a magic spell, firing it at Seldonia and hitting her. Kyle calls out to Seldonia to check on her. She tells him she was attacked but is fine, and that the knight was very precise with his shot. Kyle then realizes this knight is Zentis. Kyle tells the princess to hide and tells his friends that if things get weird, they should go to Theron. The princess asks Kyle if Zentis is coming. Kyle answers yes. The princess tells him that Zentis is a strong knight and asks if he can defeat him alone. Kyle tells her he's been avoiding a fight with him, but he has no choice now. The princess approaches him and asks why he spoke to her as if he knew her. She asks if he really saved her by chance. Kyle gets flustered and remains silent. The princess states that this isn't the right time for this, but tells him her fate is in his hands and wishes him luck. Kyle promises her that he will win. After that, Zentis arrives and sees Kyle in front of him. Zentis understands that Kyle is the one who saved the princess. Kyle confirms this and asks why he came alone. Zentis explains that he doesn't want to lose anyone else who has nothing to do with this, because he can solve all of it just by killing him. Kyle understands what Zentis means and asks him to surrender because he doesn't want to kill him. Zentis is surprised by Kyle's request, and Kyle continues, saying he will ask the princess to forgive him. Zentis gets angry and tells him to stop this nonsense. Kyle interrupts him and asks why he helped with the princess's assassination attempt, stating that he surely didn't do it for money or status. Zentis replies that he doesn't have to answer someone who is about to die. Zentis draws his sword and tells Kyle he will defeat him quickly so he can chase after the princess. It now crosses Kyle's mind that he has no choice but to fight. They cast magic spells and charge at each other. Zentis tries to strike Kyle, but Kyle dodges his attacks. He wounds Zentis and explains that his illusion magic is a trick that no one can avoid seeing for the first time. Kyle states that he knows how Zentis fights, and we understand that Zentis is the one who taught Kyle how to fight with a sword. The events begin as we see Kyle fighting Zentos with a sword. Kyle points out that Zentos is a strong fighter, which is expected from the leader of the Second Legion. Zentos looks at him with a sharp glance and charges at Kyle, delivering a powerful sword strike. However, Kyle successfully defends against it and continues to fend off Zentos' attacks. Kyle reveals that Zentos' physical abilities are stronger than his own skills. Zentos casts a magical spell at Kyle, but Kyle dodges it with his sword. Zentos swings his sword at Kyle, and Kyle blocks it with his foot before leaping into the air. Zentos remarks that this kick is unworthy of a knight. Kyle responds that this is what his master taught him. He then throws a magical stone at Zentos, but Zentos counters it and sends it back at Kyle, resulting in an explosion that sends Kyle crashing to the ground. As Zentos attacks him again, Kyle stands up and blocks Zentos' strike, noticing a fresh crack in the blade of Zentos' sword. Zentos steps back, expressing admiration for Kyle's sword, and Kyle thanks him. Kyle asks once more if Zentos will surrender because he does not want him to die. Zentos tells him that if he wants to save him, why doesn't he just let him kill him instead? Kyle smiles and explains that this is an unreasonable request. Zentos thinks to himself that he doesn't want to prolong this matter, and that he must act to end it immediately. He prepares to attack, telling Kyle that he will kill him with this strike before pursuing the princess. Asking for Kyle's name, Kyle replies that his name is Kyle Leonard and hopes he remembers it. Zentos assures him that he will remember that name, and they charge at each other. We hear the clash of swords as Zentos quickly strikes at Kyle with his sword, but Zentos' sword breaks. We see Zentos notice the sacred dragon stone falling from Kyle, causing him to become enraged. He charges at Kyle once again, who grips his sword, preparing to strike back at Zentos. Meanwhile, in Kyle's memory, we see Zentos telling him that he bore his sword for the kingdom and the royal family, and he was very proud of that. Kyle asks him if everything he did was for the kingdom, and Zentos tells him he has a poor impression of King Zergos. Zentos explains that the state he dedicated his life to has vanished, and now he only carries his sword for his own sake. Kyle asks if that is difficult for him, to which Zentos answers no, as he feels he has been liberated. We return to the present time and see Kyle, tears in his eyes, striking at Zentos with his sword. We see blood pouring from Zentos' body, and he falls to the ground. Kyle asks if Zentos deliberately let him block his sword. Zentos replies that he did not, and that he blocked it with all his strength. Kyle continues, revealing he knew Zentos would block his strike and then would deliver a fatal blow. He clarifies that this is the Zentos he knows and trusts. Zentos spits blood, smiles, and tells Kyle he is strange. Kyle apologizes, saying that there are priorities he must protect, and that Zentos was part of those priorities. Kyle bids Zentos farewell. At the palace, we see the prince feeling anxious and wondering what is happening. He hears the door to the room open and suddenly calls out Zentos' name, only to be surprised that it is not Zentos. We see the captain asking for permission from him and telling the rest of the legion to search. The prince angrily asks who they are, and suddenly we hear the princess welcoming him and asking how he is, shocking the prince when he sees her. The princess commands the captain to arrest the prince and interrogate him, allowing her to use force if necessary. We see the soldiers apprehending the prince, who screams and asks what they are doing, struggling against them. The princess leaves the room, and the soldiers begin to hit the prince, shutting the door behind them. The princess thanks Kyle and his friends for everything they have done for her, but Kyle thanks her for placing her trust in them. Theron notes that this resolves the princess's family dispute, and she confirms his words, stating that this is the end of the dispute. She adds that she wants to thank them officially in the royal capital. Kyle smiles. In the royal castle, Lizzie expresses her happiness, but Orza feels uncomfortable in this place. Seldonia looks at the food and seems happy. She grabs some pieces of cake and eats them. Theron calls one of the palace maids to have tea with him, while Kyle apologizes to the princess for his friend's lack of self-control. However, the princess asks him not to feel anxious. The king enters, and the princess rushes to him. The king shows concern for the princess, who apologizes for making him worry. Lizzie asks if this is the princess's father. Orza suddenly stands up and tells them that he is the king. The king asks his daughter, the princess, if she is sure of what she reported. The princess replies yes, adding that these are the ones who saved her life. The king tells them that he is not here in an official capacity, but stands before them to thank them not as a king, but as a father. Kyle states that this is a great kindness from the king. The king informs them that what Carinas did was unfortunate, but asks why Zentos was helping him. The princess believes he may have been involved with another state or allied with demons, and they must investigate this discreetly. The king tells Kyle and his friends not to tell anyone what they have heard currently. Kyle assures him that they will not tell anyone anything that would harm the kingdom. The princess reassures the king that they can trust them. The king sees that if this is the princess's opinion, he agrees and confirms that they will receive a reward for what they have done, and Kyle and his friends bow to him. After that, the citizens were informed about the incident, that the monsters attacked Princess Melina and Prince Carinas while they were on their way to the village of Sanis. Half of the 2nd Legion, including Commander Zentos, was killed in the attack, and Prince Carinas was severely injured and sent to Kortim for treatment. This was the official story announced here, and only a few knew the full truth. Later, we see Kyle and his friends entering a party at the palace dressed elegantly, and people look at them in astonishment. When they reach the king and princess, they bow before them. The king addresses them, stating that Kyle and his friends are the ones who saved the princess from imminent danger, presenting Kyle with the Medal of Saint Randoner. Kyle accepts it humbly, wearing it as the crowd applauds. They speak of him as a true hero, a hope for humanity, an expert in weaponry and magic. This moment marks the first appearance of a great hero, known by many names in history. Thus begins the saga of Kyle, the new hero. That night in the king's chamber, we see him speaking to himself, explaining that Zentos and Carinas were useless. After he abdicates, Melina will become queen. Being exceptional, she will make the kingdom better, and he will not be remembered as a king, but as a father to the princess. We see him getting angry at the thought of being beneath her. He continues that he must hurry to come up with a new plan as soon as possible. Suddenly, a hooded figure enters enters and greets him, startling the king, who asks who he is and how he got in. The cup falls from his hand as he stands up, but suddenly the hooded figure appears behind him, covering his mouth and tying his hands. The hooded figure explains that he had presented a proposal to the king during the Great Invasion, requesting help from the dwarves in a neighboring kingdom. However, the king wanted to have the upper hand in diplomatic relations, and insisted he would only help them if they were in danger. Since then, he has refrained from helping them, which led to the destruction of the dwarves. This defeat had lasting effects, causing the fall of Zergos. The hooded figure expresses he will not hold the king accountable for something that has yet to happen, revealing himself to be Kyle. He remembers Zentos's words before he died when he said, "Forgive me, O king." Kyle pushes the king toward the window, explaining that the only one capable of sending Zentos to kill the princess is the king. The king replies that if that had succeeded, they would have faced no issues. But Kyle interrupts, saying that if he could choose the state he serves, he would move closer to the king and demand the king stay away from him. Pushing the king toward the edge of the balcony, Kyle tells him that the princess is cunning but intelligent, better than a king who only cares for his own interests. The king turns to see Kyle's face, and in that moment, Kyle bids the king farewell. He shoves him off the balcony, and the soldiers hear something fall to the ground, surprised to find that it is the king. Kyle quietly observes what is happening. The king fell to his death, thought to have been drunk and fallen from his balcony. However, to preserve his image, it was announced to the citizens that he suffered from a sudden illness and died from it. Lizzie cannot believe the king is dead, and Orza is also shocked that he passed away immediately after their celebration, where he appeared to be in good health. Theron points out that had he died a day earlier, they would have had to wait to receive the medal. He hates to say it, but he feels grateful the king held on, and that Princess Melina will ascend the throne, so there is no need to worry. Kyle later learns from the princess that she is engaged to the third prince, Miser, from the Gargan Empire. He is shocked to hear about the Gargan Empire. The princess explains that Zergos once disputed territory with the Gargan Empire over the sovereignty of Karan. In the end, Zergos achieved sovereignty over Karan in return for Prince Miser, secretly promising to marry the princess. Kyle understands this marriage is strategic to ensure the alliance of the two states, but the princess wishes to formally decline the engagement. Kyle asks what will happen to Karan, and the princess tells him it will remain an independent city under Zergos. She clarifies that the engagement has nothing to do with Karan, and that they have exchanged no official letters regarding the engagement. The princess can state that the situation has changed now, asking Kyle to inform the ruler of Karan that the engagement will be cancelled and that he must obtain his consent. She hands him a letter, leaving Kyle surprised. That night, we see Kyle holding the letter in his hands. Seldonia suddenly appears and asks him what the matter is. He tells her that he does not know how the Gargan Empire will react to the cancellation of the engagement, and finds it difficult to come up with a plan. Seldonia explains that Karan may have other problems besides its issues with Gargan. Kyle asks her what she means. Seldonia tells him that the king of the neighboring state that holds sovereignty over it has died, but the ruler of the city did not attend, asking if Kyle doesn't find that strange. Kyle finds that Seldonia is right. She continues that the princess's silence on this proves it, adding that there is something wrong in Karan, and the princess wants to figure it out or find a solution to the matter. Kyle states that he will meet the ruler of Karan, believing this is an excellent opportunity, and he wants to stay as far away from the princess as possible. Seldonia thinks the princess has great hopes for Kyle, and he agrees with her. In the morning, we see Kyle, the messenger, and the princess tells him that he probably sees her as hard-hearted, since she is not affected by her father, the king's death. Kyle clarifies that he doesn't see it that way. The princess continues that she feels sad because her father raised her well and she loved him, but she doubts her father's love for her. Then she turns to Kyle and asks if he is ready to join the royal guard. Kyle is surprised. The princess explains that she wants him to serve officially as a knight. Kyle nervously asks her if the purpose of this is to keep an eye on him, but the princess responds that she wants him by her side. Kyle looks at her and tells her that he has to take care of something, but he will come running if anything happens. The princess laughs because she was just joking with him, and she is pleased to see him flustered, wishing him safety. Suddenly, we see Kyle shouting that the princess was messing with him, and his friends wonder what's wrong with him. Meanwhile, the princess is watching them when Ninos arrives and calls out to the princess, asking her if she has controlled the hero. The princess laughs and explains to Ninos that it makes her look evil, but she is sure that such methods will be necessary in the future. However, the princess thinks they must keep Kyle on their side. Ninos opposes this idea because they don't know anything about him. The princess laughs and hopes that Ninos will continue to help her. Ninos agrees, and the princess smiles. The princess then indicates that from now on, she will be in control of Zergus. In the city, the friends go to the shop. Kyle thanks the shop owner for waiting, and the shop owner congratulates him on receiving the medal. Kyle thanks him. The shop owner explains that he is sure Kyle will achieve a lot in a short time. At this moment, Theron asks where his sword is. The shop owner gives him his sword, and informs Kyle that the craftsman who repaired the sword said it looks like it has been used for several years. Theron tells him that he may have used it roughly, and asks if he has a better sword. The shop owner apologizes and explains that this is the best sword they have. Theron tells him that he will manage his way then. The shop owner promises that they will try to find a better sword. Theron tells him he will try not to raise his hopes too much. Kyle informs the shop owner that they are on their way to Karan, and asks if he knows anything about it. The shop owner is surprised, and explains that Karan is a place full of challenges run by a blacksmith guild, whose leader governs the city, and they have caused a lot of trouble, making it difficult to trade with them. But he continues that since it has become an independent city, there has been communication between them. Kyle understands the shop owner's words, and thanks him, and confirming that they will visit him again. The shop owner hopes for that, stating that looking at Karan's long history and culture, their weapons will be greatly appreciated, and he tells Theron that he might find a better sword there. Theron clarifies that he will change his habit and will look for a better sword when he reaches the city. Theron then asks the shop owner if he is sure he doesn't mind him finding a better sword elsewhere. The shop owner replies that he will find another way to make money from him, and wishes them good luck in Karan. Kyle thanks him, and they leave. On the way, Lizzie asks if Karan is a mining city, right? Kyle hears his friends arguing among themselves and laughs.